The day I first encountered Ava is etched in my memory. It was the inaugural day at a new school, and as always, I was anxious about getting lost in the throng of students. At that moment, it felt like I was at the epicenter of the universe, where everything revolved around me. Yet, paradoxically, no one seemed to acknowledge my presence. I stood by the window, observing the leaves dance in the wind. Then, someone approached me quietly from behind. "You're new here, aren't you?" A voice inquired, and I turned around. Ava radiated brightness and cheer, her eyes sparkling with an extraordinary light. At that moment, I felt as though she possessed knowledge I lacked. As we began to converse, everything unfolded at a breathtaking pace. She revealed to me that life could be entirely different, vibrant, and filled with adventures and surprises. Ava quickly became the person I had been desperately searching for. Every day after school, we spent time together, wandering through the park, laughing at silly jokes, and sharing thoughts about life that seemed profoundly deep for our 16 years. One particular evening, we paused at our favorite bench by the lake. Ava gazed into the distance, as if trying to grasp something intangible. Then she turned to me and quietly asked, "Have you ever kissed a girl?" Her question took me by surprise, but I couldn't tear my gaze from hers. I chuckled, feeling a blush creep onto my cheeks, and replied, "No. Have you?" Ava shook her head and casually suggested, "Let's try it together." My heart raced at the unexpected proposal, yet it felt completely right. I leaned in slowly, as the world around us seemed to freeze. Our lips met, and time stood still for that brief moment. The kiss was tentative yet tender, brimming with uncertainty and exhilarating novelty. I felt her breath mingling with mine, her hands softly caressing my cheek. At that moment, it felt as though everything had finally clicked into place. However, that kiss unlocked the door to something far more complex than mere romance. It marked the beginning of a tangled and intricate journey. As time passed, I began to notice changes in Ava. She started to pull away, as if she were harboring secrets she couldn't or wouldn't share. Initially, I brushed it off, attributing her distance to schoolwork and new friends. But one evening, while we were at my house discussing summer plans, her phone vibrated on the table. Ava cast a fleeting glance at the screen, and I saw her expression cloud over for an instant. She quickly tucked her phone away in her pocket, her tone growing colder and more detached. "Who was that?" I inquired nonchalantly, attempting to catch her eye. "No one," she replied too quickly. "Just a friend from university. You know how it is." I nodded, but the "no one" lingered in my mind. Why had she hidden her phone so hastily? What was it that she didn't want me to see? Over time, these little details began to gnaw at me. Ava spent less time with me, increasingly preoccupied with her own life. And though I tried to dismiss this new chill between us, it settled like a heavy block of ice in my heart. One day, while I waited for her in the park, she arrived later than usual, appearing distracted. She spoke about trivial matters, but I could sense her mind was elsewhere. When I cautiously asked if something was bothering her, she brushed it off, saying, "Just a lot going on at university." "It's fine, Chloe," but her eyes avoided mine, making me feel her response was superficial. These first seeds of doubt began to take root inside me. No matter how hard I tried to ignore them, I sensed something was wrong. Something had shifted in Ava, and it filled me with dread. I tried to convince myself that these were just temporary hurdles, that everything would return to normal. Yet one evening, when Ava failed to answer my third call, I realized we were facing even tougher challenges ahead. Weeks passed since I first noticed the changes in Ava. We still met when she came home on weekends, but each encounter left me with a lingering feeling of unspoken words. It felt as if an invisible wall had risen between us, keeping her at arm's length. One evening, Ava invited me to the movies. When we met outside the cinema, she appeared excited yet somewhat detached. I searched for the familiar spark in her eyes that I adored, but it seemed dulled. During the film, I noticed her checking her phone, repeatedly tucking it away in her bag. She smiled at the screen, but not at me. A flurry of questions tormented me, but I didn't want to ruin the evening, so I kept quiet. After the movie, Ava suggested a walk, but soon her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, shot me a brief look, and said she needed to go see Mia. It's urgent. Sorry, just some silly misunderstanding, she said. I have to go. Before I could respond, she was already disappearing around the corner, leaving me alone on the sidewalk. I stood there, feeling the cold wind wrap around me. Inside, I was screaming that something was amiss, that all these little details were converging into one overwhelming question. What was she hiding from me? My hands trembled with anxiety, and I decided to head to our favorite cafe to collect my thoughts. There, I unexpectedly ran into Sophie, a friend of Ava's from university, someone I only knew from her stories. She was seated alone at a window table, cheerfully chatting on the phone. When I approached, she spotted me and invited me to join her. My voice wavered with uncertainty as I gathered the courage to ask her a few questions. Sophia, you probably know Ava pretty well, right? I said, attempting to sound composed. Sophie smiled brightly. Oh yes, Ava is quite the star. She's always the life of the party and knows how to draw a crowd. I nodded, trying to mask my jealousy. She's having a blast at university, isn't she? Sophie continued, oblivious to the sting her words brought. What do you mean? I tried to maintain a neutral tone, even as I simmered inside. Sophie giggled lightly. Oh, nothing much. She's just met a lot of new friends. She loves parties, and there's always someone eager to dance with her. She paused, seemingly searching for the right word. Or even more, I replied, attempting to smile, but my voice quivered slightly as I thanked her for the company and excused myself, claiming I needed to head inside. Everything began to spin like a carousel. What did Sophie really mean? Why did her words carry an air of knowing something I didn't? As I left the cafe, the air felt thick and suffocating. The next day, Ava returned home, and I made up my mind to talk to her. We met in the park where we loved to stroll. She stood by our tree as I approached slowly. Ava, we need to talk. I started trying to suppress my emotions. What's going on? You seem so distant. Yesterday, I ran into Sophie. She cut me off sharply. And what did she tell you? She asked. Nothing much, I replied, attempting to mask my anxiety. But I sense something is off between us. Are you seeing someone else? Ava met my gaze, her eyes cold and unreadable. Why do you want to know, Chloe? Her voice was unnaturally calm, and a wave of panic washed over me. Her response wasn't merely unsettling. It struck me like a bolt of lightning. We stood facing one another, and I realized that our bond was beginning to unravel. That evening, I returned home with a heavy heart. My mind was a whirlwind, and every answer Ava provided only raised further questions. It felt like the start of the end, as if I were teetering on the edge of a cliff, unsure of what awaited me. After my last encounter with Ava, I found no solace. Her icy stare, her certainty that she didn't owe me an explanation, it all hit harder than I anticipated. I tried to convince myself these were just temporary bumps in the road, but an inner voice grew louder, insisting I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. The following day, I spent hours scrolling through Ava's social media and that of her friends. I knew it was wrong, yet I couldn't bring myself to stop. On one of the profiles, I stumbled across photos from a party where Ava was mingling with others, including Sophie. They looked happy, and the comments hinted at romance and flirtation. My world began to crumble around me. My suspicions were confirmed, but I still didn't want to accept it. I tried to reassure myself that they were merely friends joking around, that it wasn't as serious as it appeared. But the photos didn't lie. In every shot, I saw Ava smiling at someone else the way she once smiled at me. A heavy weight settled in my chest, like a massive stone pressing down on my heart. I had to uncover the truth. A few days later, Ava suggested we meet at the park once more. She was more animated than usual, her eyes sparkling with a new light, as if she possessed some secret knowledge I lacked. She began sharing her new plans and how much she loved being independent, free from commitments. Her words seemed directed not at me, but at someone unseen, standing beside us. Chloe, I don't know how to explain this, but I feel like I need something different, Ava confessed, avoiding my gaze. I appreciate our connection, but I want more freedom. I don't want to feel confined. Confined? I echoed, trying to grasp her meaning. You speak as if I'm holding you captive. No, not like that, Ava replied softly. I just need space. I want to be myself, to feel free to do what I want without guilt. Her words pierced my heart like daggers. I fought to remain calm, but my emotions bubbled beneath the surface. I wanted to confront her about the photos, her conversation with Sophie, and her true feelings. But something inside held me back. I realized she wouldn't share the truth with me. Her eyes sparkled, but not with tears. It was a gleam of inner joy, a sense of mastery over her situation. Instead, I decided to take a different approach. I sought out Mia, knowing she might know more than she let on. We met at a cafe, and she sat across from me, a slight smirk playing on her lips. You want to talk about Ava, right? She asked, not waiting for me to speak. I can see it's eating you alive. Yes, I want to know what's happening, I replied, trying to project confidence. What has Ava told you? Mia lowered her gaze, as if playing some game, and said, Ava has always been a free spirit. She's not the type who can be tied down to one person. But you knew that, didn't you? My heart tightened at her words. They were a truth I had feared to acknowledge. I came to the realization that Ava had been using her quest for freedom as a justification for all her actions. Her pursuit of independence ultimately signified one thing. She never intended to be genuinely committed to me. All my efforts to hold on to her had been futile. I tried to pry more details from Mia, but she only smiled mysteriously and said, You don't need to overthink it, Chloe. You already know what's happening. With that, she left me alone in the cafe, drowning in a sea of thoughts and doubts. As I walked home, I felt a shift within myself. The fear and pain began to recede, replaced by a newfound sense of determination. I could no longer ignore the reality of the situation. I had to take action. Ava continued to play her game, and I understood that I could no longer be her pawn. Days passed since my talk with Mia, but her words lingered in my mind. Each morning, I woke up feeling deceived, as if the entire world around me was crumbling. I could no longer dwell in this haze of unspoken truths. I needed to confront the reality head-on. One evening, knowing Ava would be home, I decided it was time to take a decisive step. I called her and asked if we could meet. She agreed, though there was a hint of irritation in her tone, as if I were encroaching on her personal space. I felt that perhaps I could reclaim a part of myself in this conversation. But then Ava reached out again, her voice tinged with desperation unlike anything I had heard before. Chloe, we need to talk. It's important, she said. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't refuse. We met at the same spot in the park where we once shared our secrets. Ava appeared anxious. Her hair tousled over her shoulders, and worry flickered in her eyes. She looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. I've been thinking about us, she began almost in a whisper, and I realized I had been wrong all along. I didn't want to let you go, Chloe, but I was afraid to admit it. I still love you. My heart raced at those words. I had yearned to hear them for so long that I found myself at a loss for how to respond. But I recalled our last conversation, her indifference, the emptiness of her kiss. Why are you realizing this now, Ava? I asked, searching her eyes for answers. What's changed? She hesitated, gathering her thoughts before answering. I've realized I don't want to lose you. You're the best part of my life, and I want to make things right. Yet, I couldn't trust her words. Something inside me had fractured the day she looked at me so calmly, as if our feelings were mere distractions for her. I knew I could never forget the pain she had caused me. Ava, I said quietly, feeling my hands clench into fists, you've already hurt me enough. I try to understand and justify your actions, but now I see that you can't give me what I need. She sighed, and her expression darkened. Can't you just forget everything? I've changed. Really? She implored, but her voice lacked conviction. No. Irraplia firmly. I can't forget. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to. Ava lowered her gaze, and I saw the realization dawning on her that she was losing me for good. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, they failed to move me. I had already drifted too far away, too weary of it all. "All right," she said, looking at me with a strange blend of pain and acceptance. "If that's what you want, I'll let you go." I was at a loss for words as she turned and walked away without looking back. I watched her leave, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders, yet the emptiness inside me deepened. In the weeks that followed, I tried to resume my normal life. Noah became my support, but he sensed I still hadn't let go of my past. One day, while we were sitting in a cafe, he looked at me and said, "Chloe, I think you need some time. You still love her, or at least you think about her. Maybe we should take a break." I knew he was right, but it felt like a knife to my heart to lose someone else dear to me. I reluctantly agreed, and our meeting ceased. Soon after, I learned that Noah had started seeing another girl, and our relationship completely fizzled out. I was left alone in a city filled with reminders of Ava. Every place and memory was intertwined with her smile, with what we had lost. I could no longer hide the truth from myself. I had lost everything that once mattered. Ava was gone. Noah was gone. And I was left alone with my thoughts and regrets. The story culminated on the very bench in the park where it all began. Sitting there, I realized that my attempts to cling to Ava had only led to the destruction of my own life. Tears welled in my eyes, but I understood that it was finally over. All that remained was a profound emptiness and an unsettling sense of freedom that I had never wanted.